What's up, everybody? It's your favorite competitor's favorite nerd. Today we are looking at a comparison of Mafex Darth Vader, SH Figuarts Darth Vader, and Hasbro's Darth Vader. And we will try to do this the best way. We're going to do a little bit more of these this year, but or this coming year, depending on when this video goes up. But we're going to try to get to the bottom of this one way or another. All right? Okay, let's talk about accessories. So with the Mafex Vader, you get a slew of hands, which is, or what is it, a few? You get a few hands, which is a bit more than a little and yet not quite a slew? Or is it a slew hands and doesn't matter. If you know the reference, you have my respect. And I will go over them with you now. You get a right holding hand, or a left holding hand rather, to accompany the right holding hand. You get a right fist and a left fist. All of these are identical. They're just black plastic, no real. There's some sculpt work on the glove, the little rivets and stuff, but nothing really noteworthy. You get a right pointing hand to accompany the left pointing hand. You get a right and left force using hands. You get this hand, which is like a shake your hand. And then you get this nub for when Luke chops it off, with some paint up on the wires. You have green wires, red wires, blue wires, silver wires, and a yellow wire. And you get this head, which is for his Anakin look. And we'll show them all a little bit later on, but it's a black piece of plastic, which is I found interesting. So the pale skin is painted on, the eyes are painted, there's a bit of a gloss on the eyes, there's wash on the scars, and we know how he got those scars, unlike others, and it's okay. It's not clean down in here, and I'm afraid to chip away at it because I think the paint will come with it. I don't feel like the likeness is quite there, but it's not too far off either. Now, the SH Figuarts. With him, you get, and we'll talk about their lightsabers all in a bit, but as you can see, he's got one force-using hand on his left, one lightsaber-holding hand on his right. You get an additional lightsaber hilt, because you know that's how they do business. They don't, they keep them separate, which I think is nice. And on this hilt, it's painted with the silver finish, and then the black is all painted on top. Looks really good, including that little D-loop there, which I think is a nice touch. And then you get hands. You get a few, a bit more than a little, and yet not quite a slew. We're going to go with that. Right force-using hand. And all of these are the same, also pretty much the same deal. The glove is a bit better sculpted. It's a bit more defined, like the padding on top of the hand is a bit well-defined, a bit more well-defined, I should say. Two fists, left and right, and a left, rather, lightsaber-holding hands, and then a nub, and that's all painted silver. And I need to focus on my left and right, apparently, today. And then you do not get an Anakin face, but you get an Anakin face with the Luke SH Figuarts, which we'll be looking at another day. And this likeness is spot on. It's so good. It looks so much the part. The eyes have the gloss on them. They're looking off. I feel like this eye is maybe not completely centered, or they're both looking off in this direction. Can't really tell. But the sculpt is amazing. The paint is much better applied. It's not just a wash. The scars are painted, and then the wash is applied over top of it all. Same for the cheek scar there, and the little veins and stuff. It's all sculpted. So and the silver is painted inside there. It's really a superior accessory. The bummer is it's not included with the actual figure. So it doesn't really count. I'm just showing it to you since we're comparing them. And then the Hasbro one, I can't really recall. This was sent to me by Majid. If you're in the Facebook groups and stuff, you know Majid. He's a really solid guy. But he thought about, I think, collecting these Black Series figures and then opted not to. And and I didn't have a Vader, and he said every Star Wars fan needs a Vader, so he just sent me his, which was a very kind gesture, and I will always appreciate it. This is a typical Hasbro accessory. It's warping already here. The silver and black are both painted on. The lightsaber is a separate piece. Actually, the black is probably the plastic, and the silver is painted, which is why it's relatively sloppy. But they painted the D-ring as well, which I find interesting. Two separate pieces, translucent red plastic here, and as you can see, it ain't really straight. But whatevs. And then his mask helmet just comes off in one piece. We'll talk about the figures all here in a minute. And this head, I feel like, is a lot closer to this one, both of which are a lot less movie accurate than that one. But this one is also painted fairly well. The wash is applied. This wash is applied all over the head, which I don't really think is the right choice. I think that if you were going to go the route, that this is the way to do it. And then the eyes are painted as well. And the silver is, and you've got a little gold bit on there on the two speaker pieces. So that's all good. All right. So now let's take a look at these figures. Now, this comes off here, and then that head piece pops off. But this also comes out. Let's see. There. I was pulling on it the wrong way. And then this piece goes on here. And this has the two pieces up around his mouth, but that's a nice look. I will admit that. And then that's all painted in there, and it's painted as separate pieces as opposed to just covered on there. So that's how he looks. We'll get back to that in a minute, because the problem with this is that now all this stuff is painted nicely in here, but I do have a complaint about this. One of the complaints is that's applied in there with just that little stem. I'm not even sure if you can see it. Let me see if I can't get it light. It's worth looking at. You know I wouldn't take the time if it weren't. See that little stem? It's long, but it's skinny, and what happens is it goes into wrong head. It goes into that port there. Focus. And it swivels. So like on my shelf, I've had to like adjust it slightly fairly often. I also don't like how this gray is used. I wish they would have gone with the glossy black throughout. I find that gray to be distracting around the brow. I hope that shows up well on camera. But whatever. As you can see, it's on a double ball peg. One ball joint into the head itself, and then the other ball joint into the neck. Doesn't really get you that much more articulation, though. And as you go to turn the head, you end up turning the helmet a bit more, so it looks like, it looks like he's got his hat on sideways or something. Where they make hats like that, where the brim goes off the back like that? Little wire reference. I'll give that one to you. But yeah, silver's painted on there. That's fine, and also on the nose. The chain isn't painted, which I find bizarre. That doesn't, like, this company's obviously not afraid to paint, and I find it weird that they didn't paint the chain. The cape itself is attached, but it is a nice cape. The fabric is nice. I wish it was a bit heavier of a fabric. It has a wire that runs down the front seam. It's a very small, thin wire, and I've had a hard time getting it to do exactly what I want it to do, which is usually just drape over the shoulder and come down the figure. And that's probably because I would like to hide a couple of the things that I think are wrong with this figure, which we're going to get into now. Chest is painted fine. All this stuff down in here is painted fine with the red, the blue, the silver, the white. All that stuff looks good. Articulation-wise, you got a ball joint, a double ball peg actually, at the top bit, giving you a swivel and a bit of an ab crunch. The lower section is one ball peg up into the upper torso, which gets you the same thing. So he's very well articulated in that regard. The belt itself is painted silver, green, silver, red, all that stuff is good. It's a softer plastic so that it allows for the better articulation, but this piece is just like a floppy piece on there, which it's not a big deal. It's just weird to me. This people get weirded out when I smell the figures, but like this soft plastic here, it has a smell. It reminds me of like early McFarlane figures, if you're familiar. I wish they would have gone with the cloth also for this part. I think it would have added a much more streamlined looking figure. One of the problems that I have with this guy is that like all the blacks seem different. Now on most things, like on Turmoil, I would have loved it, but on this, I kind of feel like this needed to look a bit more uniformed. So this is like a matte. That's a matte. This stuff in there is somewhere in between. The boots are glossy, and the shoulder pads are glossy. The shoulder pads is another thing I don't like. They're connected to this piece, which allows you the articulation on this ball hinge here. That's a ball joint into the torso and then a hinge at the shoulder. Well articulated. Good idea. I just wish that this wasn't a floating soft piece here. It works fine, especially when you have the arm up, but it's just, for me, it's an eyesore. If it doesn't bother you, then you win. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbow, getting you pretty much the whole run. Wrist swivel here and hinge, and it swivels at both ends, so you just adjust the hand as you want. Same for the other side. This lightsaber is the one that is attached. No, this splits. This comes out. I'm not going to do it because it's jammed in there, but this piece, I believe, comes out as far as I can remember. And then the lightsaber itself plugs in to this piece on his belt. If you were to separate it, and you have it like that. But my Vader's going to be holding his lightsaber. That's how we roll here. Painted all right. It's a black. I think this is a black piece of plastic. Yes, black piece of plastic, and then the gold and the silver are painted on, but it's painted with much more care than the Hasbro one. Articulation is the same. Okay, so hips. You have these soft pieces of plastic here. They get out of the way, no problem. They're on a double ball peg system. So one ball peg goes up into the pelvis, and then the other ball peg comes out onto the hip on a, you see how that joint's cut there? So articulation-wise, it's not really an issue. This plastic does get in your way, but you get up to there and, you know, out to there. And I don't think for Vader you need these more extreme poses, but they are available to you. Thigh swivel, well done. And then double jointed knee that looks pretty good given what it is. Little gap in there that could have been fixed as well, that's what makes it a little obnoxious, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It's pretty well done. Glossy black like we talked about before, and then on the ankle themselves, it's almost like a Play Arts ankle without the ratchet. So you get the hinge, and then the rocker is built in, and then a toe hinge, and that's all pretty much it. And yeah, so that's him. For the Play Arts figure, different set of issues. I feel like the forehead section is disproportionately long to the face. It really, really bothers me. Not sure if anyone else feels the same way, but I definitely feel the same way. I got a red fleck here. I'm not sure if that's paint or not, but whatever. We'll ignore it and imagine it's just a fault with mine. Head sculpt wise, though, it looks good, and the black is uniformed. The helmet comes off like that. We'll take off this cape now and talk about it. They did paint the chain. The cape itself is a soft pliable plastic. I think it's a better choice than their hard plastic that they've done with capes that I've seen in the past, but still not the preferred route. I much prefer the cloth cape. Sorry about that. My father called me during it. I went and took the liberty of putting his cape back on while I was talking to him. Ironic. I was talking to my father during a Vader bit. But the cape does plug in. You see those two little places where it plugs in to kind of keep the cape flush against his back. I think that's a really smart idea. I dig that. Not crazy about the cut of the cape. Not crazy about the lack of options of doing stuff with the cape. But that's how it operates. The shoulders, very well done. They're on that hinged ball joint system that we've seen, so that you can get them up and out of the way in order to articulate the arms. I love it. I think it's the smartest way to do it. I think it's the best way to do it. totally into it. The arms themselves are on a, you know, I don't know if it's a ball peg or, I guess it is a ball peg. Same type of thing into the torso. The torso itself does have a butterfly joint on it, so you can get a little bit more across, but not much. Bicep swivel. All the rivets are sculpted. They're sculpted a bit cleaner and deeper than the Mafex one, but I'm not sure if they're sculpted as well as the Hasbro one. The Hasbro one has a lot of wrinkles and stuff in it. I don't think that the gloss was a good idea, but I think the actual sculpt is pretty sharp. Now, this one does more because you get the bicep swivel in there, you get the double jointed elbows that work like a champ and are fairly clean. The wrist swivel and hinge to get you everything you could want there. All the paint on the torso is also done well. Not a lot of differentiation between the inner parts of his torso and then the outer robe, so I'm not crazy about that. Articulation there is on a ball joint, which gets a double ball joint, which gets you the full range, and then the lower one is also on a ball joint, same type as the Mafex. Blue, red, silver, and gold paint applied to this middle bit here. Silver paint on the belt, and then the side bits are all done with the green and silver, very clean. This is all this soft plastic again, same type as the cape. Not crazy about it, but it's there, and I like the way that it folds underneath one another. I think it gives it a lot of depth and texture to that softer plastic. Legs, typical kind of Figuarts, where you get the sliding ball peg down into the hip so that you can extend the leg to kind of get the more extreme poses. The joints are very smooth, work well out in front and then out to the side. No issues whatsoever. Thigh swivels built in, but is much more limited than the other, and the pelvis is one piece, which I do prefer. The knees, double jointed. Not as well done as in terms of looks, aesthetics, as the Mafex, in my opinion. And then the glossy boots, all the stuff sculpted on there, par for the course. Ankle tilt, not as extreme as the Mafex one, and rocker, which works just fine. Toe hinge. So that's this guy. Lastly, our old Hasbro pal. Now, I got news for you. He's not as good as the other two, but he's contending. This guy didn't get blown out of the water here, okay? But we'll talk about him. Head, like the sculpt, I don't feel like I feel like it's proportionately one of the better ones, but I don't feel like it's glossy enough. I feel like the other two landed the gloss a lot better. That gloss on the helmet is kind of important to me. Maybe the mouth is a bit wide too. The face kind of looks a little bizarre, but it's not hateful. It looks especially good from the side. Silver paint all done well, and then there's like a paint inside there as well. I don't like the brown eyes. That's a very A New Hope kind of Vader. Not my favorite. Not my favorite by far. Silver paint on the chest looks fine. The cape is fixed. We have a real chain for the cape, which is a really nice touch. Love that. The cape itself is sewn in to the chest piece, which makes the cape kind of naturally fall over the shoulders, which is actually quite clever. And this is even down here. It's got this little extra bit on there. It adds tension, and it gives it a little bit more weight. Very nicely done. I commend them. I love it. I think that was a really, really, really smart move. The cape itself is huge. Nice cape. And then the inside cloth is a cape that wraps around the back and then is split around the arms and comes up around the chest. Chest all painted fairly well, not as clean as the other two, but it's definitely there. We got a ball joint for the torso, which gets you the swivel, and it all moves around the fabric very nicely. The shoulders, we got silver paint on the shoulders, and then they are just on a ball hinge. So limited articulation. You can, you know, like this is a character I don't feel like needs a ton, but I'm definitely acknowledging that it's more limited. No bicep swivel, but you get the swivel at the elbow, which for me is fine. Elbow hinge is single hinge, gets you 90 degrees. Wrist swivel and hinge one direction. This one is in and out, as is this one. Only 2 hand options as well. This is a soft piece of plastic, just a holding piece, so they kind of went the Mafex and them kind of did the same thing. It's on this belt, which is also a floating piece, but keeps the kind of the cape together. All some pretty clever choices. The belt is all painted well. Well, it actually is painted well, so good for them. And then T-jointed ball joints for hips, limited to the side. Front and back is no problem. Thigh swivel, separate joint. Double jointed knees, which typical way of they do it with you end up getting the flat knee, and then you get a matte boot, which I'm not crazy about. I like a glossy boot for Vader. Ankle tilt and rocker, so not bad at all. Now let's look at them as with their Anakin faces. So that's their Anakin faces. I'll go handheld here, get my Spike Lee on, and none of them are hateful. You know, that's Mafex on the left, and the Hasbro one in the middle, and then the Figuarts one on the right. I feel like the Figuarts one proportions are a little off, but I feel like it's the best looking head sculpt. I probably would never display Vader this way, but I kind of feel like it depends on what you want if you were going to display him this way. If you want accuracy, or you know, could you lay this guy down if you're doing like a diorama or something, I think he's fine, but none of them are terrible. I kind of feel like this nailed the sculpt and paint, and this one nailed the proportions, and this one definitely nailed the easiness of it all working. You know, the other ones require a bit more effort or have to switch out pieces. Actually, I think they all have to switch out pieces in some regard, with the exception of him. So, just food for thought. I want to acknowledge that the Hasbro mask is in two pieces. I'm not sure. I think it came off all as one when I initially did it, but it's definitely 2 separate pieces, and you can sit that on to have the full, you know, reveal like Jedi. And lastly, I feel like the last most important thing is how this guy scales on your shelf. I think most people will have him with Stormtroopers and so forth. This is the Hasbro Stormtrooper, the Mafex Stormtrooper, and the SH Figuarts Stormtrooper. I would like to compare those two. If you guys would be interested in that, let me know, and I definitely will. But here's the SH Figuarts one, and I feel like he's too short for all of them, including the SH Figuarts Stormtrooper. There's the Hasbro one, which I feel like actually scales best with all of them. Like, he's the right height, and he's bulky. You know, he's not skinny and frail looking. And lastly, there's the Mafex one, which I feel like he's about the right height, but not bulky enough. Final thoughts wise, here's the deal. The Hasbro one, when he released, was at a good price point, really solid figure for what you're getting. The Mafex one, decent price point. The problems with him are the black's not matching, the general bulkiness of him not being what it should be, and the materials aren't as good as the Figuarts. And some of the decision making doesn't work out as well, like those shoulder pads that are attached to the chest piece. The Figuarts one, the materials are great. The articulation is fantastic. The choices made are extremely smart, but he's too bloody small. He's too small. He's too short. The bulkiness is right proportionately, but he's too short to be on a shelf with your Stormtroopers. It doesn't look right. So, in the end, he was about $50. He was about $40. He was free to me as a gift, but he retailed for $20. Now I think he probably goes between $30 and $50, I would imagine. So they're all about in the same price point. I'm gonna tell you something that might break your heart, and I wouldn't be mad at you. I wouldn't think poorly of you for crying a little bit. I get it, but I would go ahead and take him out of the scenario straight away. He's just not going to look right on your shelf. And then you're left with the Mafex and the Hasbro one. And I got to be honest for you, this is a hard decision. The type of decision for a guy like me that's almost impossible to make. I can only keep one of you, so which one of you has to go? In the end, though, I don't feel like either one of these is a poor choice. The one that's going to be on my shelf is the Mafex one, simply because I don't like the brown eyes, and I like the differentiation in finishes with this guy. I like the glosses versus the mattes and all that kind of stuff, where most of this is gloss, with the exception of the stuff that should be, like the helmet and the boots, which is matte, which just doesn't seem right. But for me, it's going to come down to one of these two, and if I had to choose, I would choose this guy. Far from perfect, neither are a bad choice. And as an extra note, be extra careful of that peg that's in the top of his helmet, because I just broke it putting his head back together. Swear to God. But anyway, I'm still going with him because I still feel like it's overall the best choice, but I don't feel like the perfect Vader in this scale has been made. But I feel like for the options that are available between Figuarts, Mafex, and Hasbro, that this is probably the best route, this being my number 2, and unfortunately the Figuarts one, which I think is the best made figure in this lot, would be my number 3, just because he doesn't fit in well. So hope that helped. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.